This video was requested by a patron. Patrons in the top tier get early access to videos and the ability to request future video topics for me to cover. See how you can become a patron by clicking the card in the upper right corner or the link in the description below. And now, on with our feature presentation. This man right here is Jason Kelce. By the time his career ends, in all likelihood, he will become a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, as he is one of the greatest centers of the 21st century. His career is still ongoing, but at the time of this video, he has been nominated to 6 Pro Bowls while being named an AP First Team All-Pro 5 times, with these 5 appearances coming in the last 6 seasons. He started 176 games for the team, having missed no starts since the start of the 2013 season, displaying insane longevity at the position, having not missed a start in a decade. And over the last 2 seasons, despite taking over 2,100 snaps, he's allowed a grand total of 1 sack, including none during the 2022 season, with his play on the offensive line being a gigantic reason why the Eagles made it to Super Bowl 57 and made it to their 4th Super Bowl in franchise history. Today, it's hard to imagine the Eagles without Kelce, and the day that he retires and someone else has taken the snaps, it's going to feel extremely weird and almost unnatural. It will definitely take some getting used to. However, what you might not know is just how close the Eagles came to never drafting him in the first place. NFL history looks very different if it was not for one man, and for one man only, offensive line coach Howard Mudd. Who knows how Kelce's career plays out, and how good the Eagles are going forward if it wasn't for what Mudd did prior to the 2011 NFL Draft. Because this is the crazy story behind how the Eagles drafted Jason Kelce in the first place. Before I talk about the actual decision to draft Kelce, as well as what was going on in the war room as the draft was happening, we need some context to understand just who the offensive line coach in question was, and why he was even with the Eagles. The man is Howard Mudd. Mudd was a great offensive lineman for quite some time. He played in the NFL from 1964 to 70, made it to 3 Pro Bowls with the San Francisco 49ers, was named an AP First Team All-Pro during that 1968 season with San Francisco, and even made it onto the All-1960s team, being one of the 7 offensive linemen chosen for that team. Just as a side note to understand how big of an honor that was, while Mudd is not in the Hall of Fame, 5 of the other 6 linemen to make that team, from the likes of Bob Brown, Forrest Gregg, Gene Hickerson, Jerry Kramer, and Jim Ringo, are in the Hall. However, after his playing career was done, Mudd became an offensive line coach, and that's all he did. From 1972 to 2009, for 38 years straight, he was coaching some teams' offensive line, as he was the offensive line coach in college for California, and then at the NFL level for the Chargers, the 49ers, the Seahawks on 2 separate occasions, the Browns, the Chiefs, and most notably, the Colts. However, after spending the 2010 season out of football for the first time in his life really, and after not being on the sidelines in a coaching capacity for the first time since all the way back in 1971, Philadelphia Eagles head coach Andy Reid lured him out of retirement. The Eagles, in a widely criticized move that did not make a whole lot of sense to anyone, wanted to move Juan Castillo, the team's offensive line coach for the past 13 seasons and for every year under Reid, to defensive coordinator, despite the fact that Castillo had been coaching some position group on the offensive line every year since 1990, hadn't coached any defensive position above a high school level, and had last coached any sort of defense when he was at Henrietta M. King High School in 1989. But the only way that this move was going to work in Reid's eyes was if they got a veteran offensive line coach who was one of the best in the business to do it, and to fill that role. As Mudd said, "My wife and I were in retirement in Arizona. We just had a conversation. She asked me if I thought I was finished. I said, well, yeah, there are a lot of reasons why. I don't think about it. I don't really yearn to go apply for jobs and things like that. The phone rang about an hour later. Reid said, "This isn't going to work unless we can get somebody like you to coach the offensive line. I want you to consider coming out of retirement. Will you consider that?" I was kind of stumbling around for things to say, and I said, "I am very flattered." We talked and chatted. Andy is pretty persuasive. My daughter told me, "Dad, you retired. You get to do anything you want." I want to go coach. That's what I want to do. My family is very supportive. They saw the passion that I had when I was asked. My wife said, "Geez, your eyes are alive and you're happy. You've got to do what makes you happy." So that's what I'm doing. Today, the Juan Castillo experiment as the defensive coordinator is regarded as one of the dumbest things that Andy Reid did, as the team plummeted to the fourth worst defense in the league in 2012. But it did mean that Howard Mudd was now on board. And the thing about Mudd was that he had a very specific vision for how his offensive line was going to look. From 1998 to 2009, Mudd was the offensive line coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And in all 12 seasons that he was there, the Colts had a top 10 offensive line when it came to sacks allowed, which was good for the Eagles, seeing as the Eagles took 49 sacks in 2010, which was the fourth most in football, only better than the Chicago Bears, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Carolina Panthers. In those 12 seasons, the Colts finished inside the top 4 in sacks allowed 10 times, including first in his final season in 2009 before his retirement, when the Colts made it to Super Bowl 44 after allowing just 13 sacks, and they finished first 6 times. When Mudd was with the Colts, there was a 50% chance that they were going to allow fewer sacks than any team in football. That's how good he was at coaching up his unit. Again, Mudd was an unconventional coach who, at a time where a lot of offensive line coaches wanted big, heavy guys who were bulky and could dominate with their strength, wanted guys who were a bit lighter and were more agile. Said Jim Washburn, the team's defensive line coach, Howard was out of the box before out of the box was even a term. Mudd had his offensive linemen practicing spin moves, which was not common at all. Because how many times is an offensive lineman going to spin in a game? But that's just the kind of guy that Mudd was. He wanted quicker and lighter guys, as he believed they made better linemen than just guys who were over 300 and put on weight. For some perspective, here's a look at the offensive line on the Eagles in 2010, with Castillo as the offensive line coach, and in 2011, with Mudd as the offensive line coach. In 2010, the starters on average weighed 331 pounds. In 2011, not a single starter weighed that total, with Jason Peters, who played at 340 in 2010, dropping to 328. The starters in 2011 were 310 pounds on average, so 21 pounds lighter, which is a pretty big difference. In total, the offensive linemen weighed an average of 330.6 pounds in 2010. The heaviest offensive lineman in 2011, however, was King Dunlap, who was 330 pounds. The heaviest lineman in 2011 weighed less than the average offensive lineman in 2010. And whereas everyone in 2010 weighed at least 314 pounds, there were quite a few players who weighed under that mark in 2011. Weight didn't matter in the eyes of Mudd. Agility and quickness were what mattered, which was definitely not the conventional thinking back then. However, seeing as it worked for him in Indianapolis, as Jeff Saturday routinely played under 300 pounds and was one of the best centers in football, there was definitely something to this. This is a long way of saying that if Castillo was the offensive line coach in 2011, there is no way, not a shot in the world, that the Eagles consider drafting the man that you've been watching this whole time, Jason Kelce. In all likelihood, Kelce isn't even on their draft board, and even if he were to go undrafted, there's no chance the Eagles take a chance on the guy, especially since only 3 teams even had a pre-draft visit with him. Don't get me wrong, Kelce was a great player at Cincinnati, especially considering the fact that he was still relatively new to the position and was extremely raw, seeing as he came to campus as a walk-on linebacker. He helped protect a Cincinnati offensive unit that finished 4th in college football in points allowed, averaging 38.6 points per game, and a Cincinnati team that made it to the Sugar Bowl and ended the season with a 12-1 record. Kelce was named a second-team All-Big East player as a result. However, when he weighed in at the NFL Combine, he was just 282 pounds. That is extremely light. He was quick and agile for an offensive lineman. He ran the 40-yard dash in 4.93 seconds, which was the fastest time by any offensive lineman that year. But he was super light. Teams just didn't have offensive linemen that light. The last time the Eagles had an offensive lineman under 300 was all the way back in 2001, when Jim Pine started one game for the team at center and weighed 290 pounds. That was a decade ago, which was so long ago that the Houston Texans did not exist. The last time the Eagles had an offensive lineman at 280 or less, that was in 1996, when 35-year-old Guy McIntyre played in 15 games, starting 2 of them, and weighed in at 275, which was so long ago that the Houston Oilers still existed. And the last time the Eagles actually had a starting offensive lineman for the season at 280 or less, that was in 1994, when center David Alexander started all 16 games and weighed in at 275, which was so long ago that the Jacksonville Jaguars and Carolina Panthers did not exist. Again, with regards to the Eagles even considering Kelce, let alone drafting him, none of this happens without Howard Mudd. But there was something about Kelce that Mudd absolutely loved. Mudd loved Kelce's athleticism and was dead set on him. Said Mudd afterwards on Kelce's pre-draft visit with the team, he would have had to do something really silly for us not to like him. And even though the scouts were highly skeptical on Kelce, and for obvious reasons, Mudd knew that he was the guy. Funny enough, a few weeks ago, Eagles general manager Howie Roseman was talking with Jason Kelce about the process of drafting him at the time. As Roseman said, scouts were going, "I'm just telling you, he might fight half the team. At the time, nobody really looked like you. You were a converted linebacker." Said Roseman on Mudd and his philosophy, "Howard is somebody who really helped me with evaluating offensive linemen. We had Juan Castillo, and then Howard came in and was totally different. With Juan, we were looking for size and strength and power, and Howard said that he didn't want any of that. And so, what we really had to do was we had to watch guys together. And for us, it changed from that to explosiveness, athleticism, instincts, and vision on the field. You have elite vision. I had never thought of offensive linemen like that." And so, even though the Eagles had a 4th-round grade on Kelce and didn't take him in rounds 4 or 5 when he was available, by the time round 6 rolled around, Mudd's persuasion had grown to be too much. He was pounding on the table, begging for the Eagles to take Kelce. And so, with pick number 191 in the 2011 NFL Draft, the Eagles made history by taking Kelce. And outside of Mudd, little did anyone know that the Eagles now had their starting center for the next decade and a half. Kelce started right away, starting opening day against the St. Louis Rams as a 6th-round rookie, and held on to that starting job for his entire career. And even though that 2011 draft class was mainly a whiff for the Eagles, especially with the selection of Danny Watkins at guard in round 1, as he's widely regarded as one of the worst Eagles draft picks of all time, it's obvious that Kelce was an A-plus selection, as he's been one of the best offensive linemen in football for quite some time. Since coming into the NFL in 2011, Kelce has allowed 18 sacks. That's it. 176 games started, just under 11,000 offensive snaps, and 18 sacks allowed. or a sack on 0.16% of Philly's offensive plays, or once every 10 games. And the crazy part is that he's not slowing down anytime soon. In fact, 2022, at the age of 35, and even though he was considering retirement, might have been the best year of his entire career, which is saying a lot. And it all started because of the insane domino effect of wanting to move Juan Castillo, for some inexplicable reason, to defensive coordinator. Without that crazy move that didn't work out directly, the Eagles don't have the indirect benefit from that of being able to draft Jason Kelce. Because even though Howard Mudd has since passed away, his legacy lives on in the greatness of none other than Jason Kelce. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.